and welcome to the program today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Layo Olaride. We begin in South Africa. The main opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, says it has agreed a deal with the ruling African National Congress, ANC, to form a government of national unity. This comes after weeks of speculation about who the ANC would partner with after losing its parliamentary majority for the first time in 30 years in last month's elections. Or many believe this paves the way for ANC leader Cyril Ramaphosa to remain president. An alliance between the DA, a centre-right party, and the ANC is unprecedented because the two parties have been rivals for decades. Now, despite the bitter history, DA leader John Steenhuisen said the deal was a new chapter in the history of the country. And for ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula, the government of national unity is on track, and today's deal with the opposition parties is a remarkable step. The deal is also including the Nkanta Freedom Party, the IFP, a conservative party with a strong Zulu base, which got about 4% of the vote in May's election. Well, earlier today, South Africa's 7th administration members of parliament were officially sworn in. This event included the nominations of Veronica Mente from the Economic Freedom Fighters and Tonko Didiza from the African National Congress for the position of Speaker of Parliament. The nomination process follows the swearing-in of the members of Parliament. Well, the session is still underway and will also include the election of a Deputy Speaker and President of the country. Our correspondent, Innocent Samosa, tells us more on today's sit-in. Innocent.
Well, a very good evening to you, colleague, and our viewers around the world. Indeed, it's about us witnessing live the birth of the South African administration. Indeed, members of parliament were sworn in officially today, as you rightly alluded to. But there was a long adjournment because of the issues around ballot papers. It's more like election, of course, but this time around it's a little bit quicker because of the numbers. As you rightly alluded to, colleague, we have seen the likes of Tonko Didiza, who is the ANC Member of Parliament, nominated for a Speaker of Parliament by Phemi Majodina, who is, of course, the outgoing Chief Whip of the ANC in Parliament. And of course, it was seconded by Supra Mahoma-Pelo. There's a lot of moving parts here. We're seeing the likes of the Economic Freedom Fighters, United Democratic Movement, the African Transformation Movement, forming what they call progressive parties. And they've also put forward their own candidate in the name of Veronica Mente from the Economic Freedom Fighters. But earlier today, we heard from the federal chairperson of the Democratic Alliance, Helen Zela, saying that there was no deal with the African National Congress simply because of time. Time was not enough to essentially do these negotiations. And she gave example with the likes of Germany, where these kinds of things or kinds of proceedings take about 8 months. So she said that they came to a conclusion and an understanding with the African National Congress. They said the ANC was a bit reasonable in some of their demands. But if the ANC is now going to work with the Democratic Alliance, it means that the main opposition party then is the MK party of former President Jacob Zuma. But I can tell you, colleague, that moving forward, it's going to be interesting how this one will play out, given the fact that with ideology, the next... or should I say, it's going to be interesting to see how the next 100 days will play out, given the fact that the DA and the ANC ideological opinion differs. For example, the issues around the size of cabinet, the use of budget, the role of social welfare, the NHI bill that was just passed by the African National Congress. We know that the DA is contrary opposed to that. Foreign policy, for example, and also the ego and personalities within the ANC and the Democratic Alliance. But again, it's going to be interesting to see how the next 100 days pans out. Colleague, it's back to you in studio.
Well, thank you so much, Innocent Samosa, our correspondent there in Johannesburg. Well, earlier on, Innocent filed in this report about the National Association of Nigerian Students in South Africa, NANSA, in partnership with the Joburg Business School and the South Africa Nigeria Business Chamber, hosting the Nigeria-South Africa Youth Business Forum in the city. Well, this forum, themed Reshaping the Future, brought together ambitious youths from both nations to discuss, innovate, and chart the course for a prosperous tomorrow.
In a quest aimed at fostering collaboration and entrepreneurial spirit among young leaders, young people gathered for the Nigeria-South Africa Youth Business Forum. The president of National Association of Nigerian Students in South Africa, Abdul Zarek Abubakar, talks us through the vision behind the event.
Nigeria, South Africa, they're the powerhouse of the African economy. So if anything goes wrong between these two people, I think it affects also the other African countries in Africa. So we have to get it right. So we've decided to come together as one nation, one loving Nigeria and South Africa, to rebuild our relationship and solidify it in our own youth contest.
The CEO of South Africa Business Chamber, Diana Games, says the event is truly setting the stage for a brighter future.
We are really looking at small and medium enterprises to grow business, and what we're focusing on at this conference today is lessons learned, sharing experiences from entrepreneurs already on the ground, and I think that's a really important learning. We're learning about artificial intelligence and some of the interesting dynamics in training people in that from the Johannesburg Business School, which focuses on the fourth industrial revolution and related issues. And and I think in terms of the two countries, the other objective we had in setting this up was to bring people together, maybe to meet each other, to chat to each other, to, engagement between the two nationals of the two countries is really important. It's part of our mandate.
Channels Television had the opportunity to speak to entrepreneurs from both nations on the emergence of artificial intelligence and its opportunities to the African continent.
Our institutions are, should I say, decades behind. And the opportunities for people to harness the skills is quite few. And so that's why it's important we're having this kind of forums and conferences. There's a big challenge in Africa, I can tell you this.
That's such a great question. So I'll reframe it in this way. Nothing great was ever achieved alone. And if you look at the two economic powerhouses on this continent, it's South Africa and Nigeria. And if you look at the burgeoning youth population in both those countries, it's massive. But also if you look at the problems those youth populations are facing, they're similar. So really there's more we have in common than divides us.
But in order to grow, you need to collaborate with people that you share the same knowledge or skill sets, or more importantly, mindset. And it's something that one of the entrepreneurs had said, which resonates with me. The first thing is mindset. And if you then want to grow, you have to obviously collaborate with somebody.
Participants here have been involved in workshops, keynote speeches, and panel discussions, all aimed at exploring new business opportunities and fostering partnerships that transcend. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
Well, we're still with South Africa. The country is pushing for Russia to join the Ukraine peace talks, scheduled to hold this weekend in Switzerland. Speaking on the sidelines of the just concluded BRICS Ministerial Council meeting in Nizhny Novgorod, South African Minister of Foreign Affairs Naledi Pandor says without the participation of Russia in the Swiss-hosted Ukraine Peace Summit, it will not be possible to achieve real peacekeeping goals. The diplomat adds that if one side is absent, it is just an exercise in futility.
President Ramaphosa has maintained contact with the two leaders, leader of Ukraine and President Putin of the Russian Federation, and he's always had a very good reception from both. We would like to see the two in a room, and we're increasingly working at persuading that there should be a meeting in which Ukraine and Russia are present. We're concerned that there have been many where it is only Ukraine and other countries that are invited. We believe if we are to have a successful negotiated outcome, the two must be in the room together. Our own continent is impacted both by the sanctions against Russia as well as about the issue of food security. So peace and security are critical for Africa's progress and development, and so we must continue to be a party to these peace efforts. I'm not quite sure what it hoped would be achieved. Our own advice was that it may be better to have a meeting at the officials level between Russia and Ukraine, and then subsequent to that, move on to a bigger conference. But before deliberations between the two, even if it's at inception stage, we felt this wasn't really a good step to take, because it will be theater rather than a real focus on achieving a cessation or indeed a proper peace negotiation. So we are concerned, and we will attend at the level of one of our advisors, but our intervention will always be that there has to be the two in a room, and greater effort must be directed at engaging Russia and ensuring that we bring the two into a space where a way forward can be mapped out. In our view and from our experience, having negotiated our own settlement with respect to apartheid, we know that you can't tell us what the conclusion should be. We are the ones who will determine it. And that is why the two present talking to each other is absolutely imperative. Absent one, you're actually it's an exercise in futility. So I think you have to get real and ensure that you begin a process that leads you out of the conundrum that exists currently.
The UN Security Council is demanding that Sudanese paramilitary forces call off their 8-week siege of El Fasher. That's the city in the Darfur region where fighting has sparked fears of a possible genocide. Sudan's army has been fighting the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF for more than a year in a civil war in the country that has killed thousands and forced millions from their homes. El Fasher is the last major urban center in Darfur that remains in the hands of Sudan's army. The UN Security Council is also calling for an immediate halt to the fighting and withdrawal of all troops from the city. The 15-member council adopted a British-drafted resolution with 14 votes in favor, while Russia abstained.
The adoption of this resolution sends a clear message. The Council demands that the Rapid Support Forces immediately stop the siege of El Fasher and that all sides step back from the brink. An attack on the city would be catastrophic for the 1.5 million people sheltering in the city. This resolution underlines the need for full, rapid, safe and unhindered cross-border and cross-line humanitarian access. It calls on the Sudanese authorities to increase cooperation with UN agencies and to urgently reopen the Adre border to help facilitate a significant scale-up of humanitarian assistance.
The President of the United Nations General Assembly, Dennis Francis, is in South Sudan for a 4-day visit to demonstrate support for ongoing efforts to consolidate peace, security and development in the country. According to the UN, he's using the opportunity of the visit to further strengthen and foster cooperation between South Sudan and the United Nations and to express support for the revitalized peace agreement and its full implementation. The President was welcomed by South Sudan's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and an honor guard provided by Rwandan peacekeepers serving with the United Nations mission in South Sudan.
It's a mission of goodwill, but it is more than goodwill. It is a mission to let the people of South Sudan know that the United Nations have not forgotten you. We are not ignoring you. We will be here for the long haul. We know it will not be easy, but that will not detain us or detract us. We will be here with you, shoulder to shoulder, trying to get to the bottom of this so that your people can live their right to a peaceful civil life where their prospects, their individual prospects and ambitions can be achieved.
I'm very optimistic that this visit will be very fruitful. This visit will also, as I said, add positive impacts towards our ongoing and upcoming engagement with the United Nations family. Once again, I thank you on behalf of the government and the people of South Sudan, and we are looking forward to continue facilitating your visit, and we are looking forward also to continue engaging you, and we are looking forward to a fruitful, transparent, and productive, discussions between you and our leaders.
I'm hoping that my visit will elevate the level of attention that is given to the situation here in South Sudan, and therefore generate more in the way of international support, humanitarian and other support for the people who are, and it's always the ordinary people who pay the biggest price in conflicts. The first words of the Charter are, "We, the peoples of the United Nations." So the UN is about people, making people's lives better. And that is the commitment, I think, that brings us together. But where there is a will, there is a way.
That's true.
And it might take a little time, but we will cross that Rubicon. That is my faith, that is my hope, and that is my desire for this great country of South Sudan.
Ghana's state-owned electricity company has announced a 3-week interruption in power supply due to a reduction in gas supply from Nigeria. The West African country has for several years been experiencing power shortages, popularly known as domso, which means on and off in the Akan language. Power demand has steadily increased over the past 2 decades, partly due to rapid urbanization and population growth. The gas reduction, which began on Wednesday, is attributed to maintenance works being conducted by a gas supplier in Nigeria. In recent years, power shortages have worsened as the country grapples with its worst economic crisis in a decade. A senior Kenyan police officer has been shot dead after he opened fire at a magistrate in court in the capital, Nairobi. The chief inspector opened fire on Makandara Principal Magistrate Monica Kivuti shortly after she made a ruling in a case reportedly involving his wife. The officer is said to have been angered by the court's decision to cancel her bail after she absconded. The officer, identified as Samson Kipruto, who is in charge of a police station in Londiani in western Kenya, he pulled out a gun and shot the magistrate, injuring her. Other officers in the court responded immediately, with one of them shooting the offending policeman and killing him. A police report says in the process, 3 other officers were injured. Well, here in Nigeria, the burden of drug abuse is on the rise and becoming a public health concern, with the country developing a reputation as a center for drug trafficking and usage, mostly among the youth population. This was the concern for stakeholders across board who converged here in Lagos with the aim of providing appropriate recommendations as interventions for prevention, especially for the young population. Our correspondent Kelly Egiga reports.
1 in 7 persons between the ages of 15 and 64 have used a drug in the past year, and 1 in 5 individuals who had used drug in the past year is suffering from drug-related disorders. That's according to the 2018 UNODC report on drug use in Nigeria, the first large-scale nationwide national drug use survey in Nigeria.
This is a good time to start putting your questions down in your notes so that
this disturbing data is the bedrock for this town hall meeting, which has in attendance high-profile personalities and representatives from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, the UK Embassy, security agencies, NYSC core members, students, traditional rulers, among others.
In combating this problem,
for the organizers, the drug abuse campaign is a directive from the IGP, which will help strengthen the relationship between the command and the community.
This is basically directive from Inspector General of Police through the CP Lagos. In person of CP Adego Kefayode, in terms of community policing, that we are being encouraged to go ahead with a plan on how to remove use of illicit drug in our society. So every area command is being saddled with this responsibility to ensure that we have a society free of drug.
The theme of the town hall meeting is tagged "The Prison Called Illicit Use of Drugs, the Way Out."
It is a self-conviction that drugs I won't take, I won't do. You know, regardless of whatever we say here today, whatever they are going to do, they will do. But if they are convinced that they won't do it, then it's for them not to do. So it's them that this message that we appeal to, and also to the homes, the parents. We need to be more attentive to our children.
It is expected that campaigns, awareness and sensitization, as such as this gathering, will help tackle the menace of drug and substance abuse.
And in protecting the youth, Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu and his wife, Dr. Ibijoke, are inspiring young boys to become leaders of change agents and avoid bad influence. Governor Sanwo-Olu was addressing over 250 boys from public and private schools during the opening of a 3-day residential workshop of the 2024 Boy-Child Initiative organized by the Office of the First Lady.
Some select Lagos secondary school students make their way into the Lagos House Marina for the 2024 Boy-Child Initiative, organized by the Office of the First Lady to awaken the boy child towards becoming a change agent. The opening session of the residential workshop for the boy child had in attendance the State Commander of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, representatives of the State Ministry of Youth and Social Development, Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, and Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu also stops by, surprising the gathering. Dr. Ibijoke Sanwo-Olu, who initiated the program 3 years ago, explains why it is important for young boys.
We want to build a new generation of transformed male children who will contribute positively to the society. And this is the way we know best, that we have these workshops where we lock the children in, they interact with each other, they have seasoned facilitators that will give them a lot of information. Like our motto says, better informed we do best.
The issue of drug abuse, sexual and gender-based violence tops the discussion.
There is a study that was carried out in 2017. It's known as the National Drug Use Survey. That study revealed that 14.3 million Nigerians are on psychoactive substances. And out of that, we have 10.6 smoke or use cannabis. So please avoid them. Avoid circumstances that will make you use drugs.
Out of about 6,000 people that came forward to report, 3,008 of them are adults. And look at it, about 2,005 of them are children. In ending sexual and gender-based violence, you have a role to play. Boys can be abusers.
In addition to this, Governor Sanwo-Olu encourages them to embrace the values of responsibility and integrity.
Education is one. Your own self-belief in yourself is another. There's a lot of pressure on you. So you need to be able to calm down. You need to be able to say to yourself at 12, at 13, you can shape your brain, you can shape your thoughts, you can shape your ideas. You can say to yourself, I do not want to be part of a cultist camp. You can achieve whatever you want to achieve in life. All you need to do is to have your head and your brain set into your dreams and into your target.
Some of the boys are happy to be a part of this mind-opening event.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde. Have a lovely weekend.